What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel coverage of the United Football League, or I should say my coverage of the United Football League. Continuing on this week, if you guys haven't seen my coverage of the UFL, hey, I do updated power rankings and predictions every single week. This is my updated Week 3 power rankings and predictions for the XFL and USFL combined spring league. And I gotta say, before we jump into this video, I have been very pleasantly surprised with the quality of football seen here. A lot of close games. I believe there's only been one or two games that has really gotten out of hand of sorts. In fact, every single game that was played last week was a one-score game, and some absolutely amazing finishes throughout those games there. This is incredible for football to see, incredible for spring football, especially if spring football wants to last. I've been really impressed with the United Football League, and we'll talk about everything, including power rankings and predictions for upcoming games this weekend. But before we do, I just have to again thank all of you for all the love and support on the channel, especially with the UFL videos. And if you want to continue to see this channel grow to whatever lengths you guys are willing to let it reach, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, like, comment, share. And a lot of people don't realize simply watching the video is a phenomenal and huge way to help me support this channel. Whatever you guys are able to do, I would greatly appreciate. But enough stalling, diving on into your Week 3 power rankings and predictions, at least for me. It is no surprise that the Birmingham Stallions are still sitting here at number 1. They beat the Michigan Panthers last week 20-13 to improve to 2-0 on the season. The two-time USFL champs are still off and running, and they look really, really, really good. The two-quarterback system proved that it can work again. Didn't really get to see it that much in week 1 against Arlington, but Skip Holtz, known for using that two-quarterback system, at least until one of the two quarterbacks proves to outperform the other tenfold. Adrian Martinez went down with injury last week, so Matt Corral and Adrian Martinez got to play a little bit here as Adrian Martinez got healthy, and both of them looked pretty darn good. Now, again, one of those two guys probably will end up separating themselves from the other one sooner rather than later. But as of right now, with this two-quarterback system, it works really, really well. Not only are both of them pretty good passers, they just got to cut back on those picks. Both of them are pretty good runners, as shown by those rushing number there, as shown by the rushing numbers down below the passing stats, especially Adrian Martinez, 11 carries, 117 yards on the season. Really, really good stuff from Adrian Martinez. Maribel in person, speaking of the run gamers, starting to meld really, really well. And this is still a really good group of wide receivers. There hasn't really been that number one guy that's emerged yet. If there's going to be a guy that's going to emerge, I would guess it's going to be Deon Cain. 6 receptions, 96 yards, and a touchdown already this season. But even the tight end, Jay Sternberger, playing really well in his own right. And this is the defense that leads the USFL in sacks. They have 9 sacks. That's all their tackles for loss, by the way. Carlos Davis with 3 of them. Taco Charlton had 3 of them just last week. Some really good play out of their linebackers, out of their secondary. Lots of pass breakups there, 3 each to both Mark Gilbert and Lorenzo Burns, the 2 names you see in there down towards the bottom of that little stat overview. It's the top offense in terms of points per game, yards per game. Again, Taco Charlton really emerged last week. There are a lot of players that are getting back to playing for the Birmingham Stallions, so this is a defense that is only adding more pieces onto a defense that has played really, really well, has only allowed 14 and 13 points so far this year. That's around 13.5 points per game, which pretty darn good numbers there. Birmingham still leads the league in a lot of offensive, a lot of defensive categories. They get a matchup, their first home game against the Memphis Showboats this week. Don't count Memphis out, but as long as Birmingham continues to play the way that they are playing, I don't really see many teams being able to beat this Birmingham Stallions team. They, by far and away, still are the number 1 team on my power rankings, and they should be number 1 on yours too. Number 2 is the only other undefeated team in the UFL so far. It is the San Antonio Brahmas. What a dramatic win against Memphis. You take a look at that first half, abysmal. It was not good at all. In fact, I think they had more penalty yards than actual yards of offense, which, yikes, you're not really going to win football games like that. But hey, this is the UFL. 16-0 entering the 4th quarter. There were a lot of times where Memphis was starting to settle for those field goals instead of getting those touchdowns. I believe they had 3 or 4 drives end inside the 5-yard line, had to end up taking the field goal. This is the Brahmas offense that woke up late. Chase Garbers has been absolutely fantastic through the first 2 games, 443 yards, 5 touchdowns through the first 2 games. And while though Anthony McFarland, John Lovett weren't necessarily huge contributors in game number 2 of the season, Marquez Stevenson, John Trey Kirkland were. They both have over 100 yards, over 10 catches, and at least 1 touchdown. Cody Latimer, I believe, was the guy that had the game-winning touchdown against Memphis in this past game. But with the new onside kick rule, right, they were down 11 with under a minute to go. They scored 12 points in 48 seconds. You go for a 4th and 12 from your own 28-yard line. If you convert it, your drive keeps going. That's exactly what the Brahmas were able to do, and they come away with an absolutely improbable, immaculate win on the road against Memphis, stunning everyone. This team continues to find non-conventional ways to win. They did it with the fake field goal 2 weeks ago, and then last week they did it with the new onside kick rule. A lot of good defensive players still want the defense to step up and see a little bit more production, and this team needs to get disciplined offensively and defensively, and I'm talking about penalties. This is also still not a very good team on 3rd down, and they're going to be without kickoff specialist and kicker and YouTube star Donald De La Haye. He fractured his neck while trying to make a tackle last week, so very, very scary injury, but thank goodness he is okay and still able to have a lot of good function. So really good news to hear, and that he at least is okay, but again, will not be playing football due to a fractured neck. Very, very scary injury there. Tease DeBoer has been playing well. The safety, Jordan Mosley, has 19 tackles. I believe that's one of the tops in the league so far. The Brahmas got a lot of good pieces offensively, a lot of good pieces defensively. Can they continue to find unconventional ways to win? Or if they can't find those unconventional ways to win, are they going to be able to win conventionally? Something I'd be interested to watch with the Brahmas moving forward, but they are the only other 2-0 team. I've been impressed with the way they are able to win. And we go ahead and move on from the Brahmas. They sit there at number 2. A flurry of 1-1 teams are coming up next, and it starts out with the team that has the best home field advantage, as shown last week in the UFL. It's the St. Louis Battlehawks, 40,000 strong, showed up to cheer on the Battlehawks as they were able to take down the XFL champions from last year, the Arlington Renegades, for the first win of the UFL season after that disappointing loss to the Michigan Panthers in Ford Field week 1. A.J. McCarron has still yet to throw a pick this year, looking like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. 464 yards, 4 touchdowns on the season, and was really, really good last week. Mateo Durant stepped in last week at running back, and he was absolutely phenomenal. I believe all of those stats were just from last week. 14 carries, 104 yards, 1 touchdown. Wayne Gallman still there is a pretty good piece. And even though Ja'Cour Pearson, who probably when healthy is the best wide receiver on this team, I mean, take a look at those 2 guys right there. Marcel Aitman, Darius Shepard. Marcel Aitman really being the guy that is shining for St. Louis right now. 10 catches, 174 yards, and 3 touchdowns. The other of A.J. McCarron's 4 touchdowns has gone to the tight end in Jake Sutherland, who I do not believe had a catch last week. I believe all those stats still from week 1. It's a St. Louis team that has really started to wake up offensively. The defense has good pieces, and you take a look at a lot of those names there that are on that defensive side. Lavert Hill, a former Michigan cornerback, Quinterio Cole at free safety, Mike Rose, a former Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, Willie Harvey at linebacker, Travis Feeney, Talmo Penu, Ken Moladen. There are so many good names on this defense. It has to step up. It has to start playing better. The defense collapsing late in Michigan is what led them to lose, and they gave up 24 points against Arlington. Now, Arlington does have a lot of good offensive pieces, yes, but if this is an offense that, again, if they find a time where they're struggling, much like that game against the Michigan Panthers, right, and they're struggling, they can't really get a whole lot of offense to go, the defense cannot lose the game late. That's what it did against Michigan. The offense won them the game late against Arlington. Were able to drive down the field, chip shot field goal for a former, I forget what the award is called in college football, but it's the former Syracuse kicker. His name is escaping my mind. I can see it in my head, but I'm sure those Battlehawk fans out there know who I'm talking about. Nailed the game-winning field goal. Hey, look, as long as A.J. McCarron company are slinging the rock, and if Mateo Durant can keep up his performance from last week, this is going to be one of the most dynamic offenses in the league. It's up to the defense to start stepping up, start getting pressure in the backfield. You take a look at some of those defensive linemen who already have some sacks, already some pass breakups, and an interception, or I should say two of them. Callahan O'Reilly with one, Quinterio Cole with another there. Thought this defense played a little bit better than they did in week one. Continue to improve. That defense needs to continue to step up. Moving on to number 4 here, another former XFL team. So you have 3 of them in the top half of the league. It's the DC Defenders. Jordan Ta'amu still looks as good as ever. 439 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks on the year. DC was really in front of that game over Houston for most of it. Then Houston brought on Reed Sennett, and the offense really started to come to life. It's a DC team that had to make a good defensive stand in order to win that game. They were able to do it. They pick up their first win of the season, and even though that game was a little bit scary, they are the top third down defense in the entire league. And while the stat sheet may not show it, it's a team that loves to create pressure, but they have to start doing a little bit better job at being able to create pressure to the quarterback. And I talked about Jordan Ta'amu, right? Ty Scott, Kelvin Harmon, Briley Moore Kinney, Briley Moore McKinney. My apologies. There should be a Mick in front of there. It's Briley Moore McKinney. Hang on one sec. Okay, there you go. I fixed it right there. So Briley Moore McKinney at tight end. A lot of other really good wide receivers here. Kiki QT, I believe, is going to be inactive this week as he is dealing with some injury things. Nonetheless, still a really good group of wide receivers, and Ty Scott and some other names that aren't on this board are really starting to emerge for this team. But the run game has to start to get going. When DC last year, there's a reason this team went 9-1 in the XFL last year. It's because when Abram Smith is that tailback, this is an offense that is really, really tough to stop. They have been missing that dynamic ability in the run game. Cameron Harris and Darius Hagan sure have been serviceable at best, but you are missing that game-breaking ability of Abram Smith. It's a run game that without Abram Smith is going to have to find a way to improve, going to have to find a way to step up. And as far as defense, look, I already told you before, a lot of good players in this defensive front seven, especially on the defensive line. Malik Fisher being one of the best defensive ends in the entire league. But the defensive backs have to step up. Yes, you're seeing some pass breakups. You're seeing a tackle for loss there from Isaiah Johnson. It's a safety combo that has played fairly well this year, but they allow big pass plays. They don't really stop the pass all that effectively. This is a DC team that is going to need to really, really step up in both the run game and in pass defense, especially if this is the team that's going to want to try to do what they couldn't last year and go win a spring league title. They were this close to doing it before getting beat by the Arlington Renegades. It's a team that can do it. They have the quarterback to do it. They have the offensive weapons, especially when healthy with Abram Smith in the backfield. They have the defense to be able to do it. They just need to start improving on things. A lot of their stats are middling right now. They're sitting in the middle of the league in a lot of categories. In fact, I think most categories, they're around that 3 to 6 mark. So right kind of in the smack middle of that league. Not super elite, not really bad, just kind of they're there. I expect those stats to jump. 2 very tough games coming up there. You got to go on the road to play Arlington, a rematch of the XFL championship game from last year. Then on the road to play Birmingham. If you're DC, you might want to have to win one of those 2 there, starting out 2-2, especially with the start of this schedule. Definitely would not be that bad of a result for DC. Moving on here to number 5, if my slide would change. There it is. The Memphis Showboats I have here at number 5. Definitely should be a team that is sitting at number 2, much like they were last week with a 2-0 record. They dominated San Antonio. They did not let that offense go anywhere. The defense played really, really well. Look, it was a heartbreaking loss because the defense collapsed. Not only did the defense collapse, in my opinion, I also think that you got to give credit where credit is due to San Antonio, right? That team just really did get hot, right? That offense got hot late. But still, no reason why Memphis should have been in the position they were in that game where they had to try to save it, right? That is just not a position that you were going to want to be in at all, especially given the way that game had gone throughout its entirety. It just wasn't necessarily a great day for Memphis. However, there were good things to take away from it because Case Cookus was still really, really good. He was running for his life, though. Did show the ability with the legs, 13 carries, 74 yards so far on the season, but you can't let him be running for his life for the rest of the season. Darius Victor was able to pick up some slack in the run game, and this is a wide receiver slash tight end room that's really starting to come along and give Case Cookus some really good weapons. Jonathan Adams, Dawood Davis, Vinny Papel, Sage Surratt, another spelling error that I went and fixed there. And this is even a defense that has a lot of very, very good players. You take a look at that cornerback duo down there at the bottom, and Delrick Abrams and Christian McFarland. They're playing some really good football right now. Maximilian Roberts, shortened to Max just to conserve space there. But Maximilian Roberts was excellent as an outside linebacker. He's totaled 3 sacks on the season so far. John Atkins might be one of the best defensive linemen in the entire league. You'd like to see him get a little more productions in terms of tackles for loss and sacks as well. But this is a Memphis team that when they put everything together, they're really, really good. They showed that in the game against Houston. They showed that for 3 quarters in the game against San Antonio, and then they fell apart. Make no mistake, though, this is the Memphis team that when they go on the road to play Birmingham this week, they are going to give the 2-time Spring League champion a fight that they are not going to forget. Memphis is still a very good team. They're led by a very, very good quarterback. They have good defensive pieces. Do not sleep on Memphis moving forward, especially when they get to play some of the big boys coming up on their schedule like Birmingham and St. Louis. Moving on here to number 6 is where I have the Michigan Panthers. They had that loss to Birmingham this past week, and while I don't fault them too much for that loss, again, I believe I had them at 5th last week. They only dropped 1 spot. A couple teams I like a little bit better than them. There's still quite a bit that has to improve, and the stats don't really play this team a whole lot of favors. Right now, to be fair, you have played 2 of the better teams in the league so far in St. Louis with one of the best offenses. You were really able to shut that down, and at times you were able to limit what the Birmingham Stallions were able to do as well. Just simply too much firepower there on that Stallions team for Michigan to be able to hold on for the most part in that game, right? EJ Perry, though, was running for his life. 379 yards, 3 interceptions, and a touchdown this season. But again, he was just running for his life, right? 42 yards, 2 touchdowns, 10 carries. Now, those 2 touchdowns really have helped the Panthers out this season, but I believe they gave up 7 sacks against the Birmingham Stallions, and especially against a team like Birmingham that when they make you pay, they're going to make you pay. Part of the reason why Birmingham leads the league in sacks right now. That's an offensive line that has got to be able to get their stuff together, and after a phenomenal performance in week 1 from West Hills, it just wasn't a great performance in week 2. Part of that was due to the performance of the offensive line, but West Hills, I also believe, only got 7 or 8 carries this past week. He might be the best running back in the league. You have to put the ball in his belly. Give him the ball. Let him go to work. He's a really, really good player. Marcus Sims had that one long touchdown pass that EJ Perry was able to find him on. Other than that, the wide receiver slash tight end room definitely could use a little bit of work. There are a ton of good players on this defense. I think a couple things still have to mesh, and when it meshes, you've seen it work because this is the defense that was able to slow down for the most part in the game against St. Louis. What we saw last week, that's going to probably prove itself out to be one of, if not the best offenses in the entire league. The Birmingham Stallions have the best team in the league right now, and that's an offense that also, again, led by that 2 quarterback system, is really, really good. When Michigan puts everything together, this is the team that is going to surprise people. You saw that in week 1 for the most part. Offensive line has got to get better. Defense step up in bigger moments, and I'll trust Michigan a little bit more. Right now, they do sit at number 6, which means the 2 teams that sit at 0-2 currently are 7-8. I think it's pretty easy to see who is at 8, so we'll move on here to who is at 7. It is the Arlington Renegades. Now, when you take a look at what this at who they have played so far, right? You play the 2-time Spring League champion and the best team in the league, Birmingham. Okay, you lose that one at home. Maybe a little bit disappointing with how you played, but ultimately, given the result, not that big of a deal at all. You go on the road to play St. Louis. You are up for a lot of that game. St. Louis was able to battle back. You give up the game-winning drive. You give up the game-winning field goal. And for a team who really had a lot of staple on their defense last year, it's been a pretty disappointing road so far, especially considering that this defense just it really is not playing as well as it was last year. Now, Vic Beasley, Jalen Redmond, a lot of guys on that defensive line playing well. Linebackers playing pretty solid football as well. Secondary definitely can use a little bit of work there. But when you move to the other side of the ball, this offense is fantastic. Luis Perez is still a very, very good quarterback. He is a spring league vet, 447 yards, 2 touchdowns. He looks really, really good. This running back duo of Letty Brown and Davion Smith. While I want to see a little bit more production out of both of them, they've been very good so far. J.P. Payton, Tyler Vaughns, Isaiah Winstead, Deontay Burnett, Sal Cannella, really good group of wide receivers. And it's an offense that ranks top in the league in a whole bunch of categories. Passing yards per game, yards per game. It's a team that can go put up points. We saw that proven last week. They're just a really, really good offensive team. The defense is not there quite yet. Lots of very good players, including Vic Beasley, who, when he's playing at his best, might be one of the best defensive players in the league. There's a lot of promise here with Arlington, especially with the schedule coming up. Look, you still got some really, really tough matchups, yes, especially this one at home against DC. Couple weeks, you got a home game against San Antonio, road game against Houston, road game against Michigan. But it is desperation time for Arlington right now, especially because if you fall to 0-3, especially within the XFL conference, which again includes the likes of St. Louis, DC, San Antonio, and these Arlington Renegades right here, with the way that St. Louis, DC, and San Antonio have played and can play, falling down to 0-3 might already be some really early trouble for the Arlington Renegades. Got to get a win here against DC this upcoming week, and they have all the pieces to be able to do it. Not a surprise to see the Houston Roughnecks down here at number 8, given the way that the season has gone for them so far. The defense is first in tackles for loss, though, and is very, very disruptive. You saw them prove that against DC. You also saw them prove that against Memphis at home week 1. Jarrett Gorentano wasn't really doing what he needed to do to be able to provide a spark in this offense, so Reed Sinnett came in, and hey, he played really well. I think went 19 of 30, I think had one pass in that first game against Memphis, 221 yards and 1 touchdown for Reed Sinnett, and provided some life to this offense. This is a team that is still without probably what's going to prove to be one of the best running backs when healthy in the league in Mark Thompson. So TJ Pledger, he really stepped up last week. You have guys like Kirk Merritt, Kiki Chisholm, Justin Hall step up in the passing game last week when Reed Sinnett was at quarterback, and that is all fine, right? Reed Sinnett has got to not necessarily step up, but find his playmakers. Once this team gets Mark Thompson back, they can be really, really dangerous, especially if Reed Sinnett is going to prove to be the guy and he continues to play as well as he did that first week, right? But again, I talked about this defense and how disruptive they are. Reuben Foster might be the best defensive player in the entire league. I mean, take a look at that stat line. It takes up almost the entire line. 13 tackles, 8 of them by himself, 3 tackles for loss, 3 pass breakups, 1 pick, 1 fumble recovery off of a forced fumble in week 1. Reuben Foster is just absolutely amazing. The former Alabama Crimson Tide is lighting things up in the UFL. It's a secondary that has played a really good football so far. Corn Elder has 4 passes defended. I do believe that leads the league so far. Ethan Westbrook, Toby Johnson, Adam Rodriguez up front. Really, really good Houston Roughnecks defense, right? But the offense needs some spark. The offense still needs some playmakers. And ultimately, when you take a look at every single team thus far, I have been most disappointed with the Houston Roughnecks. Not to say that there still isn't promise. And again, there still isn't room to be optimistic here, especially with a road game against Michigan coming up here. Should be a fairly interesting game to watch. This is just going to be a very, very tough season for Houston moving forward, especially if Mark Thompson is going to be out for a much longer period of time than a lot of us would like to think, especially given his talent. So there you go. There are my power rankings all the way from 1 to 8. We'll dive on into predictions now, and we will start, as usual, with the first game that's going to kick off this weekend. How about this for a matchup in week 3? Very well might be your game of the week that you have to circle. 1 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN in Arlington, Texas. It's in Arlington, Texas, I should say. My apologies. It's a rematch of the XFL championship game from last year. The DC Defenders and Arlington Renegades. Look, both of these teams come in with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, right? Arlington, after losing some tough games in the first 2 weeks, are looking for their first win of 2024. Meanwhile, DC has revenge on its mind. They want to take revenge for what happened to them in the XFL championship game, especially because of how dominant they were really all season long. I believe the run game is going to find its groove here. When you take a look at the Renegades' run defense, it is not really that great. I believe it gave up 6.5 yards per carry last year, or not last year, last week, close to that number. And especially again, a DC team that is lacking that pop out of the run game because Abram Smith currently still hurt, still not playing. This is a run game that I believe it's going to find its groove. It's a Renegades run defense that has not proven to be very good this year. It's a Renegades defense as a whole that definitely has a lot to work on, but especially in the run game, DC can take advantage of that. I expect the run game to maybe not explode, but at very least provide help to Jordan Ta'amu and company for DC. You have to start creating pressure. DC has too many phenomenal weapons for you to not really be able to create some pressure in this backfield. And Arlington, while their offense has been pretty solid for the offensive line, I should say, has been pretty solid for the most part, it does have some holes. Find them, create some pressure. But again, as I talked about when I talked about DC in my power rankings, DC's defensive backs have struggled. They have to be strong here because Luis Perez, this group of wide receivers, they can sling it. They can get the ball down the field. It's going to be really hard to defend this group of wide receivers, especially with one of the better quarterbacks in the league slinging the rock for the Arlington Renegades. For the Renegades, does Luis Perez have DC's number? Again, this is a DC defense that was really hard to figure out last year, but something about it said that Luis Perez had this team's number, and he went out there in the XFL championship game and put on an absolute show. May very well have to do it again this upcoming week. The Renegades defense has to come up large, I believe, many times. I think this is going to be a game where offense is going to be aplenty, right? Both teams are going to go down the field. They're going to have plenty of scoring opportunities. I just see this being a really high-scoring game, so I think whichever defense can step up and make some bigger plays here is going to give their team a lot better of a shot of a chance to win this game. But the rematch, I think, will come down to the quarterback play. Which quarterback plays better? It very well could be, hey, the quarterbacks may have to find a way to out-duel each other here for to be able to win this game. But I think there's a lot working in the right direction for the Arlington Renegades here. I do believe that this is a Renegades team with their backs against the wall. They're going to find a way to pull out and win. Like I said, very high scoring game. Could see this one going either way. That 1 point line, I'm sorry to all you people that like to bet out there. Not myself. Again, all lines and odds as of recording this video. Do not take betting advice from me. Please, I'm not here to give it. But this is I think the odds makers did get it right. I mean, I have exactly what the odds have, right? I have 27-26. I've had that for quite some time, even when looking at the odds right before recording this video. I think Arlington, with their backs against the wall, going to be able to find a way to win. Luis Perez will do it again, as Arlington will pick up their first win in 2024, leaving DC to fall to 1-2. We'll move on here to the second game that is going to be played this weekend. And talking about the Birmingham Stallions, they're the 7-point favorites against the Memphis Showboats at home. We'll run through things really quickly here because, hey, I said don't discount the Showboats. Here's what they have to do in order to win this game. One, Case Cookus in the offensive line has to be absolutely brilliant. The offensive line at times in that game last week against San Antonio just wasn't really that great. Case Cookus has proven he has weapons to throw to, and Darius Victor especially started to step up in the run game last week. If the offensive line can give Case Cookus time and can open up holes for Darius Victor, they could potentially make things really, really interesting here for the Birmingham Stallions, especially because this is a defensive back group that, again, I've hinted on it all season long. You want to try to find a weak point with this Birmingham team, attack that secondary, especially that safety duo. That is maybe not necessarily the weak point, but might be the weakest point of the Stallions defense. Case Cookus and company will have to be fantastic. Disrupt the backfield here, right? Get this running back duo of Maribel and Person down. Be able to keep Corral and Martinez inside the pocket. Disrupt the backfield. Collapse the pocket, keep the quarterback contained, keep everything right in front of you. Don't let anything get to the outside if you are Memphis, and you're going to be able to have yourself a pretty good day. A lot of good players on this front seven that should be able to create some havoc. We'll see if they can actually get it done and get in the face of these wide receivers. So it doesn't matter what quarterback is in there, both of them can throw the ball, and both of them can throw it really, really well, and they are throwing it to a really good group of wide receivers. This is a game where I expect Birmingham to maybe see one guy really step up and take the reins in terms of the wide receiver position. Do not let them, defensive backs, get in their face, slow them down. And again, one thing that's not even on here, Memphis leads the league in terms of time of possession. They held the ball for 10 more minutes than San Antonio last week. Again, just another kind of blow to the way they ended up losing that game, as they were controlling the clock. You have to control the clock against Birmingham, otherwise you will not be able to win this game. What can the Stallions do to be able to move to 3-0 this 2024 UFL season? Well, can one quarterback separate from the other? We know the two quarterback system works, and hey, even when Adrian Martinez got hurt last week, Matt Corral stepped in full time, played really, really well. But again, this is a Birmingham Stallions team that Skip Holtz loves to play the two quarterback system until someone can emerge. Until someone can emerge to be better than the other. I expect this to be a game where maybe that doesn't happen at its fullest, but it starts to happen. And it may be something that starts to become a trend where one of Corral or Martinez start to separate. And if I had to guess, I'd probably bet on Corral more so than Martinez to separate and earn that full-time role as starting quarterback. And hey, utilize the offensive balance. Like I said, Maribel and Person both running really well. Got a good group of wide receivers. Both quarterbacks can run. Make the Showboats team guess. Keep them on their heels as to what is coming next. But pressure the quarterback, because, hey, if Case Cookus is going to be able to outduel the quarterback duo here of Corral and Martinez, Birmingham is definitely going to have their hands full. Again, do not sleep on Memphis. It's a team that controls the pace, controls the clock, has a lot of very good weapons offensively and defensively, but I think the Stallions are just too tough. I think the quarterback system, or the two quarterback system, will work again. There's going to be a wide receiver in this game that starts to emerge himself. My bet would be on Dion Kane as the number one target. I love what the Birmingham Stallions have done so far this year. No question to me, I'm going with the Stallions. I will take Memphis to cover, though, but 23-17 is where I see this one playing out from Birmingham, Alabama. The Stallions improved to 3-0, and I think will maintain their number one ranking into next week. You move on to the games that are going to be played on Sunday. This is actually a fairly interesting one, in my opinion. The Panthers may be the 2-point favorite, but Houston really started to figure things out last week, especially offensively, once Reed Sinnett came into play. Michigan is 1-0 in Ford Field. That's where this game is at. 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's noon for all of you out there on ABC from Ford Field in Detroit. Let's go back to the Roughnecks, and like I said last week, Reed Sinnett provided this offense with some life. And even though Mark Thompson is not playing, right, even though Mark Thompson is out, and this is a run game that still has to find a rhythm, go back to that second bullet point, Reed Sinnett was able to put some life into this offense. Same thing is going to have to happen this week as well. What I talked about with Michigan, when this defense puts everything together, a lot of good playmakers, they can create havoc in the backfield. The secondary can be really, really good. They're going to give this Houston offense a very, very tough challenge. But if Reed Sinnett can find the spark in this offense this week, much like he was able to do last week, almost spurring that sort of last-second win against DC a week ago, it's a Houston team that can come on the road and get this thing done, especially if the run game, even without Mark Thompson, can find that rhythm with a guy like TJ Pledger. Hey, that's going to be really, really good for them. But defensively, look, the big key is two things. This is a team that can provide a whole ton of pressure, so pressure EJ Perry. He was running for his life last week. Make him run for his life again, because you have a very, very good defensive side. You have one of the best defenders, if not the best defender in the league, in Reuben Foster, but you have to be able to stop Wes Hills, limit his production, make EJ Perry run, make him throw balls away, make him try to force balls in, make those tough plays, and you're going to be riding high really, really well, especially if you are this roughneck defense. Now, what can the Panthers do? Well, what I just talked about, do the exact opposite of that. EJ Perry can't run for his life again. Michigan's not going to be able to win if EJ Perry is running around, scrambling, trying to do this and that and the other for this offense. And you have to give the ball to Wes Hill. Give some of the pressure, or Wes Hills, I should say, get some of the pressure off of EJ Perry, and this offensive line has to find a way to step up. It's going to be a really tough ask against a really good Houston defensive front, but EJ Perry has to be able to sit in the pocket and make some throws, because when he does, pretty good quarterback. Defensively, though, for Michigan, again, when you put everything together, you're a really disruptive unit, a really good unit, and you limit the big plays. Get Houston scrambling and discombobulated. Don't let this offense drive down the field. Control the clock if you can. That's really all the keys I have for this Michigan defense. But all in all, limit the turnovers and try to force some turnovers if you are the defense. This is a Michigan team that holds the worst turnover margin in the league through this point. But you know what? Everything that I just talked about here, I think, is going to come into play. I think Houston's pressure is going to be a little bit too much for Michigan. I think EJ Perry, running for his life, is going to throw a pick or two. Already has 3 of them on the year. This is the Houston defense that absolutely can make you force some turnovers. And in Ford Field, I got the Houston Roughnecks picking up their first win of this UFL season. I think a combination with the pressure, Reed Sinnett providing some life into this offense, I think they're going to go on the road and get this one done against Michigan. I really do. 2017 is where I see this one sitting. It's definitely going to be a very fun game. And would it surprise me if Michigan won? No. Kind of making a little bit of a call here, because, again, if that offense goes flat for Houston again, then egg on my face. But with Reed Sinnett providing life, with the way this team can get pressure to opposing teams, especially in the backfield, they're going to be able to slow down Wes Hills. They're going to get EJ Perry scrambling, and I think they force a turnover or two that helps them seal the game. 20-17, where I see this one for the Roughnecks. Final game here. You move on to talk about the Battlehawks and Brahmas. What very well might be the game of the week in San Antonio. First off, we talk about the keys for the offensive-heavy St. Louis Battlehawks. McCarron's been able to find weapons without Ja'Cour Pearson, especially in Marcel Aitman. Really, really good player. And A.J. McCarron, I believe one of, if not the only quarterback that has had substantial playing time, maybe besides Reed Sinnett there as well, that is still yet to throw an interception this year. A.J. McCarron has this offense moving. He has them working really, really well, especially with the way Mateo Durant was able to step up last week. He's got some help in the backfield as well. Slow, methodical drives. Keep San Antonio out of this game. We saw what, even when you give the Brahmas a sliver of time, you saw what happened last week in that miraculous comeback against the Memphis Showboats. Slow down, control the pace, slow, methodical drives. They're going to be able to hit their big plays here and there, but if you can control the clock, control the tempo, that's going to bode really well against a team like San Antonio, but you have to be able to create havoc in the backfield. Again, it's a San Antonio team that finds unconventional ways to win. It has a lot of very good playmakers on the outside, some good playmakers in the backfield as well. Create some havoc, create some pressure. It's a defense that just, I think, is going to have to step up in general in order to come away with some of these with wins against some of the better teams in the league, much like we've seen out of San Antonio this year. Can Chase Garbers outduel A.J. McCarron? I think that is a very, very big thing to watch, because if that is something that cannot happen, well, the Brahmas are definitely in some trouble. Now, Chase Garbers has been able to perform week in and week out for this team. Outdueling A.J. McCarron, though, that's definitely another story. So Chase Garbers, one of the front runners for UFL MVP right now. We'll see if he can do that entering this week. Force St. Louis into making mistakes, force them to make turnovers. And again, if you are San Antonio, control the clock, control the pace of the game, use your unconventional ways to be able to help you pull out a win here. I just don't think unconventional is going to work this time. I think San Antonio has surprised really, really well so far this year, but when you come up against as dynamic of an offense as St. Louis is this year, that is just a very, very tough ask. If this one was in St. Louis, I would be a lot more confident in picking the Battlehawks, because the Brahmas, I believe I've picked against them both weeks, and it has come back to bite me. I'm making the mistake again. I'm picking against San Antonio again this week, 26-22 in favor of the Battlehawks is where I see this one playing out. Again, I just think St. Louis has that more dynamic offense. They're going to be able to do what they want against this Brahmas defense, and St. Louis will prove to be victorious here in Week 3. They'll improve to 2-1, while the Brahmas will fall to 2-1. Hey, that's my week 3 UFL power rankings and predictions. If you want to see more UFL coverage every Thursday or Friday, I upload one of these videos. So subscribe. We got some college football content coming your way. Hey, my Ohio State Buckeyes have their spring game this week. Spring games are starting to kick off. The spring transfer window is open. We'll recap the fall window, or I should say the winter window, and preview the spring window as well in a video coming up this weekend. That's all for now. Enjoy UFL this weekend as well and spring games. And remember to play hard but tailgate harder. See all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.